Yeah, that whole.
That's the thing. Each one was 150 cents for 130 pages.
Yeah.
I just went to the highlight parts of it. Went to the part of the judge's ruling and summarized a lot of things and stuff. Just to try to figure out what happened.
Well, I actually started on some of that and I was lost in a matter of pages. And I'm like, oh boy, this isn't gonna be good.
I'm an engineer, so but my dad is a attorney judge, so I got that going for me.
Sure.
I'd like to say it's genetic, but it's not.
Well, I have a sister who's an attorney, but that still didn't help.
So it's not genetic.
No, no.
Snacks and the other side. Got mango. Short. Can you see the short?
They said no.
This guy was at our ranch.
What is
We're good to
that?
go? Okay.
He was at our ranch.
All right, I think we'll start this work session. I want to welcome everybody today, and today we're going to hear information on black bear hunting with Montana State Houndsman Association. So welcome, and I'll turn it over to Quentin.
Chair Robbins and other members of the commission and Director Warsack. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of brief comments just to add some additional context to today's conversation. And first is a procedural connection. It is a work session, as you pointed out, so there's no decision on the table here today. There's going to be discussion about House Bill 468, which is legislation out of this past legislative session that allows hound hunting for black bears during the spring season. In following up after the legislative session, we had some members of the Houndsman Association reach out to us. A couple of us as staff members enjoyed a conversation with them that helped us understand better just exactly what hound hunting black bears is and what it isn't. And we thought in that conversation, given what we heard in the conversations throughout the session, that would be good context for others to hear before we actually start biennial season setting overtly with the December commission meeting, where this topic and all the other regulations for hunted species for the next 2 years as proposals will come to the commission. So we settled in on this afternoon before tomorrow's business meeting as a business session. We express appreciation to the commission to setting aside a block of time to hear out of their first person experiences the houndsmen talk about hound hunting black bears. Again, all for additional context and understanding for coming discussions starting December. And with that, perhaps I'd suggest a round of introductions. And again, no decision on the table, a Q&A format initiated by some opening remarks from the houndsman. Chair Robinson.
Okay, guess I can start. Chair Leslie Robinson. I live near Zortman, Region 6. So.
Hi, Pat Tabor, Vice Chair, and I'm from Region 1. I live up in Whitefish.
Brian Siebel in Billings, of course, Montana, and I represent Region 5.
Bill Lane, I'm over by the Baker, Montana area in Region 7.
Commissioner Byerth.
This is Patrick Barth. I represent Region 3, and I'm out of the Bozeman, Montana area.
Thank you.
And Hank Warsack, Director of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, my name's Terry Zink. I'm a 4th generation houndsman here in the state, and I am here to introduce you to HB 468.
Thank you.
Casey Stutzman from Marion, Montana, in the Northwest, and also just a 25-year houndsman. Also been able to work with FWP on their mountain lion monitoring program
Can you hear anything, Commissioner Byerth?
I can hear the commissioners loud and clear. The presenters were pretty muted.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Yes. Go ahead and start it. We'll start over with.
You bet. My name's Terry Zink. I'm a 4th generation houndsman. I'm from Marion, Montana. And, and we're here to introduce the commission to HB 468, hunting black bears with hounds.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Casey Stutzman, and also just a member of the Montana State Houndsman Association. And I've been a houndsman all of my adult life. And I've also been fortunate to be a part of the FWP's mountain lion monitoring program and as a contractor as a houndsman.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Josh Ains, member of the Montana State Houndsman Association, Great Falls, Montana. I've been running and treating lions, bobcats for 20 plus years, and just here to answer any questions you guys may have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Byerth?
I see Casey Walsh is listed under the attendees.
Oh.
Commissioner Walsh?
Is he on?
He texted me, Madam Chair, he texted me and said he can see the group and hear well, but my audio and video connection isn't working. So
Okay.
he's still at home. And so.
Okay, did you hear that, Commissioner Byerth? He's just listening in because his audio and video is not working properly at home.
Okay, I just didn't want to leave him out if he was waiting in the
Thank
wings.
you.
Thanks.
No, I appreciate that. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Dwayne Hosteller, board member of the Montana State Hound Association. I'm an avid hound hunter. I hunted in Montana, Idaho, BC, Oregon with hounds, bears, mountain lions, bobcats, lynx. So.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Justin Duffy. I'm a board member for the Montana State Houndsman Association and the houndsman for the Yellowstone National Park Cougar Project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Chairperson and commission. We're here to present HB 468 and it's black bear hunting with hounds, and it's something that us as houndsmen, we have a passion to give ourselves another opportunity, give the rest of the community here in Montana another opportunity at hunting in a different aspect. So to get to it, a typical day for us in hunting black bears with hounds is getting up early in the morning, loading up our dogs, putting our collars on the dogs, going out, meeting friends, meeting, other people who want to hunt, and then, putting a couple dogs up on the box and going out and, and allowing the dogs to strike a bear and then, and treating it. And then, most generally, a lot of the time we take a look at the bear, take a picture of it, and, we don't even harvest it. With us, the opportunities come, where, we're able to look at that bear, judge that bear. Okay, that's a sow, that's a boar, that's a sow with cubs, and then most generally they're set free, and then, and then go about that. So, and then we're also here, all of us, to answer all the questions that you want to ask us. If that answers,
Quentin.
Sarah Robinson, other members of the commission, and Director Warsack. And so, yeah, if I may, I could put a couple of questions on the podium
Yep.
as I think back upon the legislative conversation on House Bill 468. And, some questions that come to mind quickly as well. What sort of consequence does this represent for cubs? sows and cubs at sight, cubs of the year? Is there not potential here for cubs to be inadvertently taken? And the same sort of question to the grizzly bear. Is there not opportunity here for grizzly bears to become involved in an unwanted way in the pursuit of bears by hounds? And so those are two questions I guess I'd maybe see the Q&A session with, and would look if there's some response out of the first person experience, they can help us understand how to see those.
Sure.
Circumstances.
Whichever one of you would like to. Sure.
Commission. So concerning those questions of cubs, I think one thing to recognize with hounds is that hounds are not there to injure or affect the animal in a way. Really, it's just bringing that animal either to bay if it doesn't want to climb, but 90% of the time with the black bear, they're going to climb a tree. And so typically, like if you have young of the year with that sow, she's going to put them cubs up above her. And when you do tree, she's going to be down lower, 8-10 feet, below them cubs, and she's going to push them cubs up above. And they'll be squawking and carrying on up in the tree. They're wanting to come down, and she'll smack them back up there, and she'll look down at the dogs, and she's, but we don't have that a circumstance where those dogs are actually like. No, I'm not saying that a dog wouldn't, if they had an opportunity to bite that little cub or something on the ground, it would. But the athleticism that that black bears represent, though, is it's just a very non-typical situation. So those cubs are going to be protected by their mother, and a lot of times too, she'll put them cubs up in a tree, and she might even take off and keep on running. She might make a loop and then come back to that same place and end up treeing there. But so once in a while, you'll have a dog treed on a tree, and you'll get there, and there'll be a couple cubs, and she's still making a loop and coming back, and you'll have a split race like that. But we're fortunate, especially to have technology available to us to be able to. We have GPS radio collars that are on each of our dogs, and we have a live uptime feed of exactly where those dogs are at on a topographical map. And that allows us to stay close to those dogs. We're not having to, years past, a lot of times those dogs might have been treed for quite a long time before we can get to them or find them. We're able to stay in close range with those dogs. We're also able to have training devices and be able to tone and handle those dogs with a training device that's built into those GPS systems to where if there's something like if there's a bear bait on the ground or something and we're done, we can tone those dogs and they're going to follow us out to the truck, and we can call those dogs off. Having that ability to be able to have a close handle on our dogs now, especially due to technology, allows us to have a lot more of an active part in that pursuit, and it really aids itself to being very selective and being able to stop situations quickly that aren't right, and it allows even just. There's always been a few houndsmen that had that capability with their hounds to have a really good handle on them, but that technology has really helped everybody have that kind of an ability to have a lot better control over the pack of dogs.
Run off satellite?
It does. The caller is talking to satellites, and our unit is talking to satellites to gain a coordinate, but then they're speaking to each other through FM radio signal. So it's still limited by topography and distance, but it's an awesome tool for us to be able to be a lot better stewards of that race. So, any other questions?
The grizzly part of it? Oh, sorry.
No, that was what I wanted to.
Yeah. So speaking to the grizzlies, like, and I might not be completely clear as to the question, but it's very similar in the answer, in the fact that the dogs are gonna would bay and strike on a bear, but it's important to recognize that houndsmen, we as houndsmen, first and foremost, have no desire to pursue a grizzly. So it's a very unpleasant circumstance, because grizzlies are obviously going to climb a tree, and they don't tend to run either. That grizzly bear is just gonna walk and bay, and those dogs are just going to be sitting there following them. It's just a slow paced race. It's difficult to stop. There's not a tree. Like we run for the tree. You know, we want to be able to look at those animals, take some pictures, pet the dogs up, and then go along our way. When we interact with a grizzly bear, it's just going to be the same thing. Like I'm saying, you're just going to get to where you can get to your dogs, call them off, tone them, shock them if necessary to make them quit, and call them back. And it's really actually as simple as that in our interaction. If there is a grizzly incidentally pursued, but we also, you use your own judgment too, and there's specific areas that obviously you stay away from. There's specific stuff, but we're going to do everything within our power to. I'm just saying, like it's not like it's a desirable thing to go and pursue a grizzly bear. So. One, we're going to stay away from it, but if that does happen, that's how you handle it. You just get in there, and our dogs, like I said, are trained, and we have training devices on them to be able to stop them.
Madam Chair, just a follow-up question. Can you start kind of more at the beginning of the day with the dogs, and how you typically lines? I know you look for tracks in the snow. So now it's spring season, I think is what was authorized.
Yep.
How do you go about finding and setting the dogs? Are you looking for tracks? Is it the dogs that smell? Can you start from the beginning and kind of walk us through the day?
So absolutely. It's just like Terry mentioned there, we're up early. You're going to be wanting to hunt, the transitional periods right at dawn and right at dusk. Similarly to other species, that's when they're moving. So we're going to be, as Terry said, putting a few dogs possibly on the truck, or even if their heads hanging out of the box. Those dogs are going to be able to sort and sift the wind, and they're going to be able to strike. We call it striking, when they just basically alert us and bark when they smell the game that we're ready to pursue, or that they're trained to pursue. And they'll do that same thing with other game. Like they'll do that on a mountain lion as well, or a bobcat, if the scent conditions are present to give them scent up on top of the truck, which in really cold temperatures that becomes difficult and stuff. But those dogs are trained to strike, and so once you get a good strike, then a lot of times you're just going to put one or two dogs down. It depends on how your pack is trained, but put a dog down, and that dog's he has to be able to determine which direction, where's that bear track actually at, because a lot of times that scent is present in an air current. And so that dog has to decipher, did that bear just walk down in a creek and there's an upward, thermal that's bringing that scent available to him, or was it actually walking down the road, or did it cross the road? And they have to sort out which way did it come from and which way did it go. And then because there's not tracks available to look for, and a hound handler is going to help that dog. He's going to see matted down grass on the bank, or sometimes if it's been after a rain, you might see a bear track, and you can help those dogs and get them going in the right direction quickly and right off the bat. But most of the time, it's up to those dogs to decipher out where that animal came from and where it's going, and take that track the right direction. And then once you get that track going the right direction, you might put 2 or 3 more dogs in there. And that pack of 3 or 4 dogs is about perfect to be able to put good pressure on, to put enough pressure on that bear to where he's just going to climb in a tree, but not so much pressure that he's going to be forced to fight either. And so we like to, and even within that pack of 4 dogs, you're probably going to have a couple real experienced dogs. Those are probably your start dogs, your strike dogs. You might have a couple puppies, youngsters, yearlings along that are just getting introduced to the right scent, and they're getting introduced to the whole experience, and they're gonna be eventual contributing members to the pack. But so there's varying degrees of experience set in that pack of dogs. But and it's also important to understand that the bears they're a difficult animal to pursue with hounds. There's a lot of scent available, so it can be kind of misconstrued that it's easy, compared to say a bobcat track or something that might have a lot less scent, and those dogs might have to be a lot more accurate with little bits and pieces of scent. Where a bear, in the right conditions, there's always conditions that are poor. That track might be 2 days old or something that there's not much scent. But if the scent's available, those dogs are able to run at a high rate of speed with their head up and really kind of drift that track and just put a lot of distance on that track in a short amount of time.
Do you use different dogs to run cats, or are you able to use the same? And how do they distinguish what you're hunting that day?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So we typically use a lot of the same dogs,
because if they caught a cat track, I was just curious.
Yeah, exactly. And eventually, once in a while, can happen. But once there's bear scent present, those dogs are looking for bear scent. It's very difficult to pursue cats without the aid of snow, and so you will. I mean, there is a chance once in a great while that a dog will strike a lion track or something, and they'll trail that for a ways, but they switch over. Those dogs learn real quick that we're looking for bears, and we do use a lot of the same dogs. But there's also specialists. Like your best bear dog might not be your best cat dog, and so we'll use a dog that has, for bears especially, it's going to be dogs that have a lot of endurance. Because a bear, when it's pursued, they'll take off and start running a lot of times, especially in areas. We hunt Idaho a lot, and I've hunted Utah a lot, and in areas that get pursued with hounds extremely heavily. These bears get ran a lot. And you'll watch across the drainage, and you'll get a strike, and you'll kick the dogs down, and they're roaring down through a drainage, just getting started on a track. And you'll look out there, all the way across the canyon, and here's a bear, and he's already running. And it might take your dogs 45 minutes to get to that spot where you just saw that bear running. And he'll keep that up. And a bear, if he wants to, I truly believe if a bear wants to, especially in the spring of the year, it's a very different thing. They don't have the weight that they've packed on all summer. Those bears are lean, and they're moving, and they're traveling, and we'll get upwards of 18, 20-mile races. Probably an average race, I'd say, is 10 to 12 miles. And you might get a pop-up right in the ditch once in a while. But as a general rule, you're looking at a fast-paced, moving across a lot of country, and which also, this is back to even the ability to stop your dogs if they're pursuing the wrong game or grizzly bears. We target areas that have very good road systems and good access, because for us to be successful bear hunting, when those dogs go 21 miles that way, you're not hunting the peripheral wilderness areas, or you just don't want to. You want to be in areas where I can just drive around the mountain and cut those dogs off and get to where they need to be. And so if you watch houndsmen, we're always hunting those areas, especially that have good logging roads and mining roads, and we tend to kind of stay out. And that goes true for cat hunting as well. But a lot of times with cat hunting, you're going to stay more in that localized drainage. Bear hunting, a lot of times you'll end up 3 drainages over, and so access becomes a very critical part of that. That access also helps us if you do end up having a game that you're not wishing to pursue. We're able to cut them off. Using our GPS, we can see right where they're heading, get on that road, and just be sitting there waiting for them right when they come to the road. We can stop those dogs, pick them up, and then go on and find the right game and not waste our day out chasing something that we don't want to be catching. We don't want to waste all day long, pursuing something that we don't want to catch.
So this might be for you, Quentin, or perhaps you, Ron, but I think the law that was put in front of us doesn't reflect the 637 amendments to it. So we need to fix that. And then I do have a couple of questions about it in enforcement, and either you guys might be able to answer it or maybe Ron can. But so the existing rule of hound handling, and this used to happen a lot when I was an outfitter, when you injured a bear, and I believe it's under clause 87.404. I should put my glasses on. 87.6404. Item 6A. So if you injure a bear, you could go out and use dogs to track down the wounded animal, but at that point, you had them have on a leash. And so I remember a lot of times calling some of my houndsman buddies and saying, hey, we got a wounded bear. It was under spot and stock, help us find this bear so we can recover it. Now we have a kind of a tricky enforcement question here, because technically speaking, you can now hunt bears with a dog. So when you're trying to find a wounded bear with a dog, are you still subject to that clause 6 and have to put them on a leash if it's injured? Probably not a question you can answer today, but I think when we move our way towards regulation, we're going to have contemplated that to understand, how the law applies, because I could see there being a great deal of confusion. The other thing I'd point out, and it's just because it's very fresh on my mind based on what's on the agenda tomorrow, but we are precluding the grizzly recovery zone from application of the utilization of hounds, which now I understand is unenforceable because we really don't know what the boundaries of the grizzly, recovery zone are. We don't have that mapped or in OnX or whatever. And so for enforcement purposes, we're going to have to figure out how enforcement can figure out whether they are or they're not in the grizzly recovery zone, because right now we ran into this, Ron, with the wolves because we were trying to use that as a definition for what would or wouldn't be applicable for snaring. And one of the reasons why we're getting away from potentially doing the grizzly recovery zone is because we can't define it, or enforcement can't figure out the boundaries because of the way it's defined. So that's another to do for our regulations with regards to how are we going to help enforcement on that. So those were just 2 enforcement issues that I had on that. The other piece that I guess I'd like your guys' opinion on, since you're here, is, so one of the things contemplated in 637, when we had to make sure that there was enough room for licenses, if you will, for hound handling for non-residents. So that you guys that wanted to pursue, because the original D4 license was created for the purpose of pursuing, this podium's so annoying, sorry guys. The original D4 was designed to create a cap or a limit on the number of non-resident hound handlers that could come in and compete with you all on the various parts of the landscape. And so the original codification of the D4 actually had in statute a limitation of the number of D4s that could be applied in any one district. And it also had a cap on the number of licenses that were going to be issued. We grew that cap to 80, I believe. And I've had conversations with these two pretty extensively with regards to ultimately what the regulations will look at, like in terms of the division for what goes to lions and therefore what's left over for bears. I guess you'd look at it that, or maybe what's in bears and left over for lions. And we still have to sort through some of the issues relevant to, if you draw a D4 and you're going out with bear, does that automatically then allow you to go use a lion because you still have an active D4? I don't know the answer to that question. I think these are the intricacies when we get to rulemaking that we have to figure out. But I guess I just wanted to hear your guys' opinion on the whole non-resident houndsmen coming in and them being part of the whole deal. We all also obviously have outfitters that will, if they're allowed to, if they're in the right areas, will undoubtedly try to either hire you guys or have their own hounds and pursue that. But does somebody want to just talk a little bit about that in general? Do you kind of know what I'm asking here?
Yeah, I do. In fact, you and I have talked about that. So, and so that we talked about splitting the 80, 40 going to lions and 40 going to bears. And so, I don't know how we could put that. We'd have to do it in a draw and then separate the two. Okay, if you want to come here for bears, you put in for bears. If you want to come here for lions, you put in for lions. So I think that'd be our best solution to that. And guys are going to want to do both, but we do have to separate that, okay, where that is in statute if you draw that hound handling permit. So I think we've got to put them in 2 different categories, one for bears and one for lions.
I think you're right on that. Yes. I agree.
So, and then put it in a draw at 40 apiece.
Yeah.
And then, you know, back to the grizzly bear question, you know, when we were, and just so you guys know, I was the one that, you know, facilitated this and got it going, and then the rest of the guys helped out, and we all came and got this going. And it's the first time in 100 years that we'd be able to do it legally. So how I set it up, because I've been working at this for 4 years since I got out of high school, trying to get this legal. And so back in 2013 was the last time that we introduced this and brought it down to the legislature. Well, it was, you know, pretty much slashed right away because of the grizzly bears. So this time I looked at it, and I've looked at it ever since. So we used the island approach. You know, the island approach is the grizzly bear recovery zones. So us as houndsmen, we stay out of those zones. We don't go near them. We don't go into them. That leaves and then another thing that leaves the spot and stalk guys, which I also love to do with my son. That leaves them a great big area to go in to hunt too, plus all the rest of the state too, if they want to choose to do that. So, but if that answers your question.
I think for the protection of anybody that wants to do this, though, the department's going to have to really have clear delineation, because somebody could trip mistakenly into the GRZ and not even know it.
Yes, and so these maps that I gave you came from their website.
Right.
So the blue lines that are in there are the interagency recovery zones and the boundaries. The other lines are out there are where grizzly bears have gone down to, which would be legal for us to go in and hunt black bears in.
Right.
So and they're pretty, definitive, of where the lines are. You guys would have to go into the different creeks and stuff like that and say, okay, here's where this line is. And for me, how I set it up and got it to Paul Fielder was, okay, we're going to go up to the Cabinet Yak, and we're going to, cross that one up. Like the Northern Continental, that one was an easier one for me. Go to north to the Canadian border up by Eureka. You come all the way down to, Whitefish, over to Columbia Falls, south to Seeley Lake, over to the Augusta Highway and north.
Yeah.
That shuts you off.
Right.
So that highway right there is a pretty easy one to for you guys to work with. Then down in the Yellowstone, that one, I don't know near as well. I know the Cabinet Yak really well. The Yellowstone would be that's one that you guys would have to work on and go across there and figure out, okay, where are the roads in here that we're going to be able to use to, tell us, okay, you guys don't go in there. That's a no fly zone for you. And, Cabinet Yak, you're gonna basically do the same thing there. And that one, if you look on Onyx, and I kind of did and just kind of overlaid it, in there, it's pretty, pretty easy there. On the Cabinet Yak, the road up there for, and Dwayne could kind of, talk about that one of where the road is up there, and coming down on then going around. And so, that's my thought on the recovery zones.
I had a question, Madam Chair. Just clarification. As I read this statute, and you mentioned there, Commissioner Tabor, there were amendments to this. It appears near the D4 is only applied to lions for non-residents.
So HB 637, which was the omnibus bill, modified this, and we're working off of the extant one prior to modification.
So bears were added to the D4s.
Yes.
For non-residents.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And quite a few other revisions to the D4 language, actually.
Yeah, and that worked out awesome. And we all of us, worked really hard on this. We want this to be, good for everyone, including the outfitters. I've talked to Mac and Moga, and they're totally on board. And for me, it's just about opportunity. It gives us another opportunity here in this state to get out and recreate. With this, for me, it's a big family thing, and friends and family. And we get everybody together and go out and have fun. and go out and, in the spring and set up a camp, just like we would elk hunting. And, my goal is I'm going to go back over home and go to Lewistown and go have fun over there with some of my buddies in the spring. And, it will be an opportunity for, all kinds of different people from all aspects of hunting to go up. And, and then, management wise, springtime, big boar black bears, kill the ever living tar out of our elk calves and deer fawns. And we're going to be able to target some of that too. And that will help tremendously on our recovery of our deer and elk.
I just want to say, as Commissioner Byarth, I was just checking to see if you have a question. I can't see you on the screen anymore, so.
We just get to see KC.
Yeah. Let's see.
Casey's better to look at anyway, but I did have my hand up.
Okay.
First, I wondered how many houndsmen are in the Montana Houndsmen Association? How many would you guess are houndsmen are not in the association?
They'll answer.
You know what? Right now, we're well over 300 people, in the Houndsman Association, and then, there's probably another 300 in the state that that aren't in the association, but they all come to the Houndsman Association's field trials and stuff like that. And then we have another Houndsman Association, Northwest Houndsman Association in Northwest Montana, and we're probably about that same number. We just cover everybody in the state also with that.
Do you have a follow-up to that, Commissioner Byarth?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. And of the non-resident houndsmen, now we're down to 80. Is that about right?
Well, we're actually up from, 35 now to 80. We were at 35 non-resident houndsmen. Now we've bumped that up to 80.
Thank you. And then my next question, Madam Chair, if I could go ahead.
Go ahead.
So my read of the black bear regulations in the spring are that the season runs from April 15th to June 15th in a couple districts, usually to May 15th. And the bill itself specifies as a training season that goes from the end of the season to June 15th. So would you guys help me understand what the difference between a training season and a hunting season is? With your...
the training season is, okay, we're just going to go out. It's just like if I don't draw a mountain lion tag, I'm going to, take my hound handler permit, and I'm going to take my dogs out there and my family and friends, and we're going to go out there, find a track, and we're going to go out and train our dogs and get them up to snuff and keep them in shape just like we would any other athlete.
So there'd be no harvest of bears during the training season?
No, that training season, no, there would not be any harvest of the black bears during that training season. And it depends on where you're at in the state too, because some of the season goes from, April 15th till June 15th in some parts of the state. Now up in region 1, and I'm not sure about region 2, it goes until June 1st. Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm still a little bit confused, just trying to look at the bill text and to see if it was, so you can hunt bears during the spring season with the aid of dogs, but then there would be an extended, so there would be harvest during the April 15th to May 15th time period, but then till June 15th, also the training season. Is that how you guys read the bill?
Well, I don't anymore. There's not a place where it's May 15th. It's June 1st. For different parts of the state. So up in region 1, we are, we're until June 1st that we can kill, and harvest black bears. Now, other parts of the state, depending on where you're at, it's June 15th. So that's going to kind of overlay in different parts of the state as far as harvest and training. So the parts of the state that June 15th goes till you'd be able to harvest a bear until June 15th and train. So in region 1, we would be, our harvest would stop at June 1st and we would train until June 15th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Tabor had a question also.
That was actually mine, was the overlap from, it's actually May 31st is the end. And so you have in certain parts of the state an overlap of training versus harvesting. That effectively exists in Lyons as well. So
Right.
it's not a particularly relevant point from the standpoint, there's some people that love to just go out and do it and never harvest the entire time frame. It's more about the chase.
Yes.
And it's probably worthy, Commissioner Byorth did note that there are limitations though to the non-resident houndsmen and what they can and can't do relative to the usage of that D4 for that very reason. So, and I think it's spelled out a little clearer when you see the modified statute.
So I guess I would request that we get the statute that applies to everything that we're discussing. If we could just get it emailed to us, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also some quota seasons as well. So the quota, female quota of 10 or 2 or over in 510 and 520, and in 700 a total quota of 12. So that would have to be taken into account as well, which is why I say, it may end sooner than later. And would the chase season continue after that in quota season? So there's a lot of details that need to be ironed out.
I do have a question.
Commissioner Tabor?
So Commissioner Byorth, you pretty much triggered a question in my mind. So one of the things I think the commission's going to have to do, similar to what we have to do for Lyons, and I think this was voted in the June meeting when we set our lion regulations of D4, when we set in the lion bear regulations, we're probably going to want to consider whether or not we'll limit the number of non-resident hound handlers by district, because otherwise they can pound a particular district really hard to the detriment of everyone that is there. And so the idea is you're welcome to come. There's a total of 40 for you to go, but no heavy concentration in any one district. And that really kind of applies to what Commissioner Byorth was saying in those districts down in Region 5 that have quotas. It's even more sensitive if you can have a non-resident hound handlers come over there and take all that was on the quota. It makes it hard on the rest of the people living around there and trying to do that. So.
Any other questions?
One more
Commissioner
question.
Siebel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious about your experiences in Idaho and other places with regards to conflicts with spot and stalk hunters, because I could see that places like the Snowies and other places that I've hunted bear, if someone is hunting with hounds in the area and you're trying to spot and stalk. And I'm curious what your experience has been or what your
I'll let him go first. And
Fantastic.
I'll relate to that.
Thank you.
The vast majority of the conflict is with bait hunters in Idaho.
Okay.
Your dogs, baits, draw in bears. Bait hunting, I think, kills like 45% of the bear harvest is with bait, like 14% is with hounds. Bait hunters have their bait set up and pulls hound bears in. We drive along and strike these bears on these baits, and that creates conflict. But I have had some conflict with that, with baits, but I've never with a spot stalk hunter or archery hunting for that matter, which would be in the fall, but I've actually never had a spot stalk issue. Most spot stalk guys are out blasting snow slopes, avalanche chutes and stuff like that, away from roads. So it's pretty much a non-issue, really.
Thank you.
But also regarding these core habitats, I had one of my employees create a map overlaying the core habitats of the existing bear management units. I don't know if this would be of interest.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
Please.
Thank you.
And as you can see, there's a lot of portions of districts in there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
All right, here it is. from Idaho. And who I worked with was Catherine Ulrich, Idaho's predator management biologist. She's in charge of the whole state. So, and I'll just give you some quick numbers. From 2018 till 2020, baiting, in the spring took, in the harvest was 496 bears. Spring, was, 3,552. Bait and hounds was, which we won't do here in this state. We won't bait. So spot and stalking from 2018 till 2020. Fall was 914. Spring was 1,082. Hounds, in Idaho from 2018 to 2020, fall was 694. Spring was 722. So spotting and stalking, that was, a little bit more than the hounds, but the spring, and the baiting was the significant amount in Idaho.
Okay.
And so, we're going to be about an even keel here in Montana with spotting and stalking. And, and for us, the spot and stalkers generally, for me, I get off and I do it a lot with my son, and I'll go up a drainage a long ways away from the roads is what we usually do. And so us as houndsmen, we're going to run those roads until we get one bear that happens to cross, and those dogs are going to strike that bear. And then, then we're going to, turn the dogs loose and see if we can tree it. Generally there's a lot of times we just get flat out run. And, but for me, it's, training the dogs, having fun with the kids, having fun with friends, stuff like that. So, what I'll do is, I will take and I'll get this to you guys, this map or this graph from Katie. In fact, what I'll do is I'll send you the whole email from Katie,
Okay.
Over there in Idaho. And she was the one that, helped me, get all this stuff, in line. And then what I did is I handed it to Paul Fielder, and Tyson Running Wolf, who ran with it in the legislature. And then, back to the black bears with cubs. I've been doing this for, all my life. So did my dad and my grandfather. And and I've hunted all over the United States. And we never had trouble with, catching black bears cubs on the ground at all. That female is going to put that bear up the tree, and those cubs, and most generally she'll stay with them or she'll circle and come back. Leon Brown is a good buddy of mine over in Clark Fork, Idaho, and he's got Clark Fork outfitting, and he's the same thing. Third generation houndsman, never caught a cub on the ground ever. And,
Follow up. Yeah. Is it safe to say that that the sows with cubs, will they generally get in the tree pretty quick?
Oh,
they're not going to be running 20 miles.
And then most generally she's not going to go far.
Yeah.
She'll make, quarter-mile circle and come back and go right up the tree, and you'll get there and she'll be snapping her jaws at you and huffing and puffing and, and letting you know, okay, and I'm up here, and then they'll settle in, and a lot of times you'll see them up there in their sleep. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
But yes, I'll get that whole email to all of you. Thank you.
Commissioner Byers, did you have another question?
I do, thanks. So first, you guys, it's starting to sound like there's a presumption that this season is a foregone conclusion. I'm a little uncomfortable with that because there's nobody, apparently no other public have been involved in this conversation. They're not here today. Can you guys talk about how in your process of advocating for the legislation and for this season, how many other wildlife conservation organizations and other people you've talked to, other hunting organizations that might be interested in bear management?
Conservation wise, we had the support in the legislation, and Montana Outfitters and Guides was on board with us. the U.S. Sportsman's Alliance checked on, and they were with us. And there was a whole bunch of other conservation, enough to where, I can't name them all. I don't have that with me, but we had enough, support for this bill where it looked like a Bible, once we were done. And, support wise, we had, people from all over the state and all over the country to support this legislation, or it wouldn't have passed.
But there's no one here today to talk about that support. So just to make sure that the commission understands when we propose this regulation that we expect to have a broad participation and public support so we can hear from more than 300 members of a single organization who I have no reason not to respect and understand their passion for this. And I don't believe they have any ill intent, but I want to make sure that we understand that we have an obligation to have a broad conversation from a broad number of Montanans rather than just a foregone conclusion.
I appreciate your comment, Commissioner Byerth, but this is just an informational meeting. And so we all understand there's no decisions being made, just questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Walsh, did you have anything?
I do, Chair Robinson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. And sorry for the late arrival. Shauna got me all straightened out. I guess I find this very informative. I prior to this meeting knew very little bit about hounds for bears, which I appreciate, but I'm just wondering, based on a comment that Commissioner Tabor made, are we going to be creating some rules around this, or is there some action that the commission is going to be taking on this issue?
I think the consideration of doing this will be before us, right? Correct?
Quota Seasons in December.
Chair Robinson, other members of the commission, Director Warsack, yes, this would be part, whatever that proposal looks like. The proposal from the department, to Commissioner Byer's question, does not yet exist. We are here trying to better understand this effort on the ground with hounds and bears as much as anybody. And then before anything developed by staff comes to the commission at the December commission meeting and the attending public in the form of a proposal, that would go through Director Warsack. At the tail end of our process, our development process, puts his stamp of approval or not, in essence saying, yes, this is our proposal, let's take it to the commission. If that answers the question, Chair.
Thank you for the clarification. Do you have a follow-up, Commissioner Walsh?
Just to be clear for me, so that we can expect the follow-up on this one for the December meeting of the commission.
Chair Robinson, that is correct, Commissioner Walsh. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions from the commission? Go ahead.
Chair, I'm not a commissioner, but if I may, I have a couple other questions.
Yep,
and I'm just
that'd be
pulling out of memory, and I've worked on a short list again, trying to recall some of the questions and points of debate, certainty, uncertainty during the legislative session. And a couple of other questions come to mind. We heard, given the spring season, and we've already talked about the dates, there was the question, gosh, and it's like the chair's question, running a black bear and you get sidetracked on a lion. What is the potential for running a black bear and get sidetracked on an elk? And the question typically was tied to the spring season, recognizing that calves are on the ground, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're just, again, identifying as that as the question that we heard from the public, assume it's still there. So perhaps there's an opportunity here to answer that. And then one more, two more, if I may, Chair. The question, we heard people wondering how to think about the success of a houndsman chasing a black bear relative to the success of a lion hunter chasing a lion with hounds. How different, by that metric, how different or how the same are they? And I think some comments today have hinted at a definitive answer to that, but maybe there's opportunity to flesh that out a little bit more. And then the last one, Chair, with your tolerance, is a lot of the presentation on this topic and on hound hunting lions comes back to the equipment. And so a lot of people were asking, well, just how available is the equipment and how widely used is the equipment? As people, I think, commonly saw that equipment's a great asset to not only help the sport, but to avoid the conflict. So with your tolerance, Chair, I put those 3 questions, if the group would take a stab at that.
And if you need a clarification or a reminder of what the 3 questions were, don't be afraid to ask.
I think it's important, starting with the question of off game, like the potential of pursuing deer or elk or any other species other than the target species at that particular season, is that comes down to training. And all of us, no matter what, to have a successful experience in, we have to break those dogs to only be able to pursue one specific species. And so that starts when they're really young. It starts with, we're doing that constantly throughout, when you're just exercising them, when you're, and it just comes through positive and negative interactions with those dogs. But our dogs are broke to not pursue deer now. Now, is there a learning curve in that dog's life? He's got his own mind, and that's absolutely, it can take place, and it does at times, but it's similar in the same regard of that. We're going to stop that action as soon as we can, as soon as we realize what's going on, to be able to not waste our whole day chasing deer or elk or any other species, and so we can focus on pursuing bears. So it's just a part of the entire process of running hounds is breaking your dogs off of anything that you don't want to run and encouraging them to run the species that they do. So concerning the question regarding technology, the availability is everybody has it now. I'm not going to say there's probably a few old guys that still have an old beat box, which we talk about. It's very similar to the wildlife telemetry equipment that we use. We use that equipment from the 70s up until probably mid 2000s, until the GPS equipment became available to us. And it's an effective way, but it's slow. It's just tedious. You don't always have a precise location. It helps us to round up our dogs when they're lost, but it doesn't aid into the actual process of stopping those animals mid-hunt to be able to get them off of what we're not wanting to pursue. And it's available to everybody. I mean, it's really one of those things that is well known and well encouraged, and amongst all houndsmen, we're all using GPS equipment. Like I said, I'm not saying that every person has to by any means, but it's readily available, and we all use it to its fullest. So most of the young houndsmen have never hunted without it, and they wouldn't dream of turning a dog loose without a collar on.
Madam Chair. So you might want to go, because I've had the benefit of seeing our houndsmen working with it, but you might want to even go more detailed. So the overlay of the maps, the ability to use either an iPad or something similar, it's gotten to the level where you kind of know exactly where the dogs are, what's happening here, what the terrain looks like, and can be pretty focused on that. Yeah. So that's the side of tracking. And then there's the animal behavioral control element of the collars, similar to what they do with upland game birds and all that. So it might be helpful for you to explain that for those that aren't familiar, because there is quite a bit of sophistication that comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have actual, satellite imagery mapping on our devices. And so you're looking at satellite imaging, and overlaid over top of that is our location, the location of the unit, as well as the location of the dog. And it shows, it tracks everywhere that dog has been, has moved, how far away it is from you, the speed with which that dog's moving, the direction it's moving, what it's doing. If it stops, it shows it that the dog is treed or stopped or on point. I mean, there's different modes in these things, but it allows us to know not only like the dog's over there, but the dog is over there, he's making a circle and coming back. And that can be as fast as like 5-second updates. So I'm getting an upload on that collar every 5 seconds of a new location. And so with that, it's very easy for us to, and it also helps us to know which dog's in front and who's trailing behind, which allows me to go in and scoop up that dog if he falls out of a race and the young dog isn't right there up front. I'm able to go in and scoop up that dog, either be able to, when the dogs cross the road, I might be able to get that young pup back into that race up in the front. But it doesn't, that way I don't leave him wandering around in the woods while I go to the dogs that have caught the bear, and then he might decide to get bored and maybe run a deer or off game. And so all of that aids us in training those young dogs and keeping them in the right places at the right time, that they can learn the right species and spend all their time pursuing that game. But yeah, like you said, it's very sophisticated and it's extremely accurate. I guess that's the other thing to recognize. We have, and to that point too, there's handheld devices that we can carry with us. We also have, like you said, like an iPad that is on a dash mount that gives us mapping and it's all overlaid with the dog's locations and all of their, everywhere they've been, it leaves a breadcrumb trail, and it's extremely useful for also figuring out what's going on. For example, if I'm able to look at that screen, and if I see all of a sudden one or two dogs tree, and all of a sudden then the other dogs start making a big circle, I'm going to start thinking, that might be a sow with some cubs. So that allows me to have the sense to whether I go to that tree first and pull them dogs off that are treed, or maybe I stay with the dogs that are off the sow. It just gives you so much information that we didn't have before, which has just allowed everybody to have better packs of dogs. You know, it used to be extremely difficult to maintain a really good pack of dogs, and now it's just a lot more accessible to a lot more people, for sure. So I think there's one more question.
Yeah, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sussman. I'm sorry. Go make a follow-up. Yeah.
Just regarding the equipment, I mean, is it relatively easy to learn how to use? I mean, for the people, you say that you have access to it, but is it that easy to use, and is it that easy to understand like you're explaining?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's something that, you know, if you can operate an iPhone or anything else, it's very user-friendly for sure.
But as far as knowing, like you're saying, I mean, once you've gotten familiar with it, you know what that means when you see it. But I guess, is there quite a learning curve for those people that are just getting started on it to be able to recognize that? I guess that's my main question.
You know, the activity in general takes a lot of time and commitment to be able to master, if you will. That has sped that process up immensely. But for us, understanding what those dogs are doing by the way they're barking, now with the use of the equipment to be able to see what they're doing when they're doing it, the way that they strike on the truck tells me so much about what they struck. If they struck a lion, it has a different pitch to it. If they struck a bear, it's going to have a different pitch. If it's a bear that's 2 hours old or a bear that's 6 hours old, you know, the way that dog's reacting to scent on the ground, all of that takes a lot of time to learn. So it's a difficult, the reason that you don't see 30,000 people running hounds is it's extremely difficult. And it takes just we don't spend as much time deer and elk hunting, all of us. We do, we love everything in the outdoors. We fly fish, we backpack, we do everything like that. But for us, we spend every waking moment with those dogs. And it takes that level of commitment to become really good in the ways that you're saying. It is far more accessible to new people than it ever used to be, but it does take, it's done in a way that's like very much a mentorship type thing. There's very, very few people that'll ever find success just like blindly getting a puppy and going and getting a tracking system and then wandering around in the woods. It's very much passed down from generation or from friends, and within the community, it's very open that way. There's just like, you know, for example, like anybody that is willing to come along, we always just cherish that opportunity, you know, and it's always eye-opening. We've been being part of the Mountain Lion Monitoring Program the last few years. I've been fortunate to have and requested a lot of the regional biologists to come around and spend some time catching lions with our dogs. And every time, you know, we spend 2-3 hours afterward when we get to the pickup with just questions and questions and more questions. it's just an awful, and it's an excellent experience. That's open to everybody, and everybody's very open to take whoever all the time. But it does come to the actual action of doing it and developing your skill set. It comes from learning from each other, and it also just takes a lot of time and commitment to get good at. But those systems they've taken it from being up here to being right here as far as the difficulty level. So
thank you.
Madam Chair, so maybe for you, Terry, I don't know, or somebody from the Houndsman. I'm sure the topic will come up when we move there. What's the Houndsman's Association opinion on training? And because I kind of read into Commissioner Lane's question that the one thing that could hurt the sport and the, you know, your guys' association and perhaps wildlife would be irresponsible behavior, like somebody brings their lab out and says, you know, you did upland game bird last season, now let's go get a bear. And so there's there's always going to be fear of that. And so obviously in the trapping world, we want to go after some meaningful education to ensure responsible behavior. Do you guys have an opinion on that or experience?
We talked to Quentin, I talked to Mike, talked to Hank about developing a video on hound hunting with bears, hound hunting for lions, and education wise, we need to develop one, and we'd like to do that with you guys. And we talked about in our directors meeting that we would like education wise to develop a video of, okay, here's what this offers to the community. And then back to the training wise, hounds are a particular breed of dog. You're just not going to take a lab out there, and you're not, or any other kind of dog as far as that goes. Hounds are, scent and treat, and that not all those dogs, make bear dogs. Some make bear dogs, some make lion dogs. And, and for us, we're good at our trade, and we go out there, and it irritates me if a young dog bumps a deer, and that dog is not going to do it again. And we are able to tone and shock that dog prior. We go out, or I'll keep elk hides, I'll keep deer hides and lay a drag for those dogs purposely. And we go out and we shock them. It's just like, we've got cow dogs too. We shock those cow dogs, we shock our bird dogs. And, and we want those dogs trained to where, okay, if they go over there to that track, and my dogs they'll go over that deer elk track or moose track, they're going to go over there and smell it. And I mean, they're back on my heel like right now. It's incredible to watch. Or if you're near your truck, to watch them smell a deer and go beat it for the dog box because they think they're going to get shot. And that's how we want to train those dogs. Right? We do not want to go out and spend 2 or 3 hours going over the mountain going to find that dog that's chasing a deer or an elk. That's absolutely irritates the tar out of me. And we don't tolerate it. That answers your question.
Yep.
Were all the questions answered, Quentin?
Thank you, Chair Robinson. That last question was, again, coming out of the legislative session, and I think we heard it as one of advantage, as one of potential impact to the resource, and that is just how to think about the success rate. I mean, is every bear that is struck going to be harvested? And it wasn't so much a question of the choice once the bear's up in the tree, but just how effective are the hounds versus the bear? How effective is the bear outrunning the hounds? That sort of thing. Is it they're on the bear, they're going to get the bear, or is it something less than that? Mr. Chair.
So as far as the success rate goes, generally speaking, we're disappointed if we turn loose on a line and don't catch it. It's a pretty rare thing usually unless you're really trying a real old track that is 2-3 days old. You've signed yourself up for something, but as a general rule, you turn loose on a lion, you ought to hopefully catch it. Bears are a totally different story. you could go anywhere from, like they said, you know, a bear pops up 200 yards off the road, just has no mood for running. It's, you know, maybe ate too much, who knows what. They all have such personality. Some of them just run and run and run. Dogs will slow them down, they'll walk, then they'll take off running again. So I would say is there is no math to it. It depends what guy you ask and where he's running bears. Depends on topography, but I would bet that, you know, most, if you polled most guys, it's probably closer to 30%. You know, don't 30% get caught, and probably 2 out of 3 maybe get away. And a lot of times you aren't even sure that your dog struck a bear. You know, they get down off, they get down off the truck. You just can't seem to get it to go anywhere, because whether maybe that bear was 300 yards off the road and the wind just swirled just right. The dog happened to catch a whiff of it and struck, but you just can't get any dogs to take the track. But you chew up, because most of us are pretty persistent people. You'll chew up an hour trying to figure out what that dog struck for. Where's this bear at? And then there's goes half of your morning, you know. So as a success percentage, I would say that it's, you know, this whole thing's going to start out with way more guys trying to bear hunt with dogs. The next year, there's going to be half as many guys out bear hunting with dogs, because they find they've got something better to do with their time. And eventually it's going to be down to the guys that already bear hunt with dogs. That's just the reality of it. It really takes a commitment to have lion dogs. To have lion, bear, and bobcat dogs is it's a whole nother thing. You gotta either be a single man or have just the right wife. Does that answer the question?
Just to finish it, of the bears, of the 30% that you actually find, how many typically are you guys harvesting? Is it?
You know, I personally, you know, bears, lions, doesn't matter. I don't have a whole lot of the harvest isn't really a thing for me. It turns fun into work for me. You know, I probably catch 30, 40 lions a winter, and I'm lucky to see, well, I shouldn't say lucky, I maybe let 2 of them get shot. I just don't have interest in it. But I would say that I wouldn't say I'm the rule. You know, there's going to be a lot of guys that they do get a bear caught, and they're going to want to shoot it because they achieved this, you know, that it happened. But I think that most people are also going to take it as an opportunity that that's a good boar, that's a bear we want to shoot, or that's a sow, you know, let's let it go. We do get a lot better chance at looking over what we've caught prior to. And a lot of times, guys, you know, they finally get something caught, and they get the chance to stand there and look at it in the tree, and they just take pictures and say, you know what, gotcha, and go home. So I don't think that and it's going to take years in this state, like he said, through mentorship and everything else, until there's enough volume of guys out doing it to really have much of an impact. And really, it's going to pull guys that are right now spot and stock hunting in the spring. It's just going to, you know, they're going to go back to doing it with dogs instead. You know, so it's not like there's a bunch of guys sitting at home with dogs that aren't out bear hunting. They're just going to do it a different way now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Would you just like to make maybe some closing remarks?
Yeah, you know, for me, I encourage all you commissioners. We all have an invite for all of you to come and you know, and I express it, you know, come either lion hunting or you know, bear hunting with us with the dogs. Find out what it's all about, and you know, it will, you know, the experience that you'll get out of it is okay. You know, boy, this is tough. This is the toughest hunt I've ever been on. You know, I mean, you're trudging around in snow, lion hunting, you know, where it's waist deep, and you're trying to get up to that tree. you're going to go, holy smokes, what did I get myself into? Bear hunting. Okay, we're going to go out there. Like I said, we're going to set up a camp. We're going to be out there in a t-shirt and, and hiking shoes when it's warm and stuff like that. And it's a good family environment. And, it's a lot like elk camp and, where we go out and we have fun. And, for me, okay, if we tree that big boar, okay, we're going to look at him, we're going to judge him. And okay, he's a legit boar that we would harvest. Okay, if we're going to go up there, okay, that's a sow. Okay, she's a dry sow. Okay, we're going to let a kid or an adult that wants to harvest that sow. Okay, we get to another tree and we got a sow that has cubs, or we get to a tree that we see a sow and she's lactating. We're not going to take that sow. We know that, okay, she stuck her cubs up a tree someplace. And, so we're not going to harvest her. Okay, we get to another tree with a sow and cubs, and we're definitely not going to harvest her. We know what our, what our game is that we want to pursue. And, it gives us that opportunity to say, okay, here we are. Let's have fun and, have this opportunity. But I thank you guys very, very much for having this opportunity to work with you, and we look forward to doing a lot more.
Thank you for taking the time to come and answer our questions. All right.
Thank you.
So I think did you have anything else? Okay, all right, that will conclude our work session. Thank you. See you two tomorrow.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.